side episode here. It's quite simple, really. I do not object to just existing as a conscious entity. It is the associated requirements to which I object. I would happily live my life doing nothing. However, I am required to work in order to live and to feed myself also. I do not value anything enough to warrant putting myself through negative experiences such as these. So I'm even including feeding myself as a negative thing, by the way. I could have read as I need to work so that I can feed myself, but I need to work and also I need to feed myself, which is another thing I don't like. This is a bullet point thing. 1. Subjective experience is everything. 2. But in order to have a positive subjective experience, one must feel a sense of purpose/meaning. 3. Any true purpose or meaning is existentially implausible. 4. Perhaps the only meaning is to try to feel as good as possible for as long as possible. Endless cycle, as this requires a purpose but seemingly isn't self-sufficient. 5. Well-being is dependent on neurochemistry. 6. I have no feeling, which is almost certainly a fault of my brain's reward system. 7. This may be treatable using pharmaceutics. 8. But will feeling good without knowing why be sufficient to override the lack of purpose? 9. Also comes with the internal stigma of being dependent on extrinsic sources to feel good. 10. To what of my idea that the only thing that would allow me to be happy would be to have been a child genius in the past. These kinds of logical impossibilities have allowed me to reach a conclusion that, at least on the surface, seems rather significant. The ability of many people to be, by all accounts, happy, by which I mean truly intrinsically happy, not simply smiling to keep up appearances, despite what many would consider adverse conditions, has caused me to surmise that life should have an intrinsic level of pleasure associated with it, regardless of circumstances. And to those who this seems alien, I believe it is fair to say that they have some level of defect which requires treatment through reputable means such as pharmacologicals, psychological therapy, or life modification such as exercise or meditation, or perhaps a new life recipe. I've taken it upon myself to assume that at least some of these intrinsically happy people have this feature truly built into their being, and so could not have their powers revoked through reason, like might be the case if it were rooted in something almost irrefutably implausible like religion. You'll find out when you don't get there soon. Is that about? That was to do with so people talking about the afterlife and whether there is one, whatever. My answer is you'll find out when you don't get there, because there isn't one. So it's something to find out when you don't get there. Anyway, I was imagining being locked in a debate with someone trying to convince them that the only thing that is of any importance, especially with regards to morality, is each individual's subjective experience. Even in my own imagination, I conjured an individual so disagreeable and ignorant that I couldn't get my ideas across in a way that meant anything to them. And so in my infinite wisdom, I deemed it appropriate to elect via request a member of the audience who believed they could interpret my ideas and repurpose them to become interpretable to the previously impervious opponent. I think this highlights the common flaw of debates, which is that they perpetuate an incomplete pair of conversations. In fact, they are speeches more than anything. They do not truly constitute conversations, which are spoken past rather than between the two candidates. Luckily, I think people are veering away from the traditional debating format, as they are so often unsuccessful. And I think the idea of having interpreters in order to facilitate the level of understanding between opponents to be a potentially useful one. I just had another idea for an analogy to exemplify my point. Imagine a person who is mentally deranged, so much so that they believe themselves to be a superhero. And the world has been taken over by an inherently evil alien race that seeks only to destroy him/her and the rest of the world. And they must eradicate this evil and save the remaining humans who are being kept in a secret location that will only be revealed once all the aliens are dead. Of course, the things that the deranged person believes to be aliens are in fact humans, but their disorder forces them to really believe us to be evil aliens, to the point that we cannot communicate with them in any way, as they perceive all our words and actions to be alien also. What kind of morality could they have that would enable them to see past this illusion? None. They would be acting entirely morally in their eyes, in wiping out the entirety of the alien/human race. And we would believe ourselves to be exactly the same, morally speaking, if we were fully immersed in their scenario. So that's just about how you can't have a universal morality, really. Or if you can, I think I'll go into this in a minute anyway. remember the reason for my reluctance to receive treatment for my mental state, other than that I didn't want to be reliant on something other than myself. And I think the best argument against this incomplete logic is currently misused. I heard Jordan Peterson give the example of convincing people with poor compliance to take antidepressants. It was, imagine if you had diabetes, would you take your insulin? Or something to that effect. Unfortunately, this useful argument fails in my case, and in many cases where antidepressants would be necessary, as, even though I acknowledge it as a metaphor, the inability to feel emotions overrules even the usually compelling argument of doing something to survive, which is the cornerstone of the insulin argument. To counteract this, I propose altering the metaphor slightly so that the person refusing antidepressants is in a position where a loved one, or if none exist, simply a person who is happy, is the one with the diabetes. Or better yet, the person is unconditionally happy, but suffers from a disease that means if they don't take their medication every so often, as regularly as the antidepressants would be, they will die. In spite of this, the fictional character refuses to take it because they don't want to. I hope that the logic for the patient taking the life-saving drug could be apparent to the depressed person in the third person, despite their life having no value to them. And so they could be brought to realise that they in fact could be that fictional person once they took the antidepressants to get their mind in working order. I think a likely reason I can't feel anything anymore is down to a fault in my brain's reward system. I suspect that it is the result of a plethora of factors, but not excluding my excessive sugar consumption and video game/internet, more specifically YouTube usage. The most common response to this is probably to maintain my lifestyle but seek help from a psychiatrist and ultimately treat the problem with pharmacological agents, namely Adderall or modafinil. Whilst I don't doubt these methods would work, I would still prefer not to become drug dependent. I speculate that a similar result could be achieved if I took action to reset my brain's reward system. Although I have no true basis other than speculation and pop psychology, I believe simply taking a long hiatus from consuming any sugar or using the internet at all would do the job. Meditation would probably be similarly beneficial, and perhaps this is why so many people attest to meditation retreats being so transformative. Just because the time without any stimulants, without any stimulus at all really, kind of, I imagine resets the reward system so that even small things give you a dopamine rush or whatever. I don't know. I never quite wrote about the thing. What was I said I was going to go into? So the alien, the guy who believes everyone's aliens. You can't really have a universal morality because, well, you can in the sense that if there was if the universe was conscious, which it isn't, but if it was, and from its perspective, there could be a morality where it would be best to maximise the every individual's, get the highest net positive experience across the entire universe. But seeing as we're all individuals, then really you should only be seeking to maximise your own, unless you include the subjective experience of other people in your own. That's incorporated into your subjective experience, and that you would only be happy if you knew that you were maximising everybody else's happiness. There you go. That's what I think I meant by that. Right, let's end this in public. Oh my god, this is amazing. Take that, world. Right, bye, love you, bye.